And after drawing lots, it was determined that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, apparently the underdog, will be first to face a grilling in a very warm studio. Minister, welcome. Prime Minister even. Welcome back to Never Mind the Ballots.
Eric, thanks for having me back. Good to be here.
When you resigned from Boris Johnson's government, your resignation letter said that the public rightly expects the government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. How do you feel you've upheld that as Prime Minister?
I've been Prime Minister for 18 months, give or take. When I first came in, the priority I had was to make sure that we could restore economic stability. And that was the challenge that everyone was facing with the cost of living. And I said, look, this is what I'm about. These are the things I want to focus on. You can judge me. I want to be very clear and transparent about what I'm wanting to do for you. And so the first of those was to bring down inflation. And I'm pleased that we've just got the news recently that inflation is back to normal. And that is a sign of progress. I know people are only just starting to feel the benefits of that, but it shows that we're on the right track, and that's why we're able to start cutting people's taxes, and that's why I want to go further.
I want to pick up on one of those words, which is properly, running the country properly. Your closest aide, your bodyguard, your campaign manager and your head of data are all being investigated for what is essentially insider trading. Is that proper?
Well, I was incredibly angry when I learned about the allegations, as everybody would be when they would hear about something like that. Now,
why haven't you suspended?
Well, just to explain, so the Gambling Commission who are investigating these, as well as the police, obviously are independent of me, of government. I don't have access to the details of their investigation. They don't report to me. But what I can tell you is, in parallel, we have been conducting internal inquiries of our own into the situation and won't hesitate to act when information or findings come to light.
Surely that can't take too long. You just ask everyone in the room if they put a bet on when they found out about the election. You were there. You must have known who you told, right?
Harry, these are really serious matters.
You promised...
And they're subject... They're really serious. They're subject to multiple independent investigations, including a police criminal investigation. It's right that nothing that I do or anyone does compromises the integrity of those investigations, and you understand that. But I want to reassure people, we are in parallel and have been conducting internal inquiries and won't hesitate to act if findings or information comes to light. And I've been crystal clear, if anyone has broken the rules, then they should face not just the full consequences of the law, but they will be booted out of the Conservative Party.
What does it say about your leadership, though, that people so close to you felt that that wasn't a problem? You promised integrity, professionalism and accountability when you were the blue broom to come in and fix the Tory woes when you took after Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. How does this stack up with integrity?
Well, Harry, we're doing exactly... You talked to...
They felt able to go down the bookies as soon as you let them know that there was an election coming. I mean, who are you employing?
Harry, you should just be careful. There are independent inquiries ongoing. Those haven't concluded. They're being done by very serious bodies. The Gambling Commission...
Your aide, Craig Williams, said he made a huge error of judgment.
Gambling Commission and the police. It's important that nobody says or does anything that compromises the integrity of those investigations. You said in the letter, I said things should be done properly. Well, what's proper is to investigate things, to get to the bottom of it, to uncover the truth and then act on those findings. That's exactly what we are doing. So in parallel, we have been conducting internal inquiries. These are very sensitive matters. They have to be done in a way that doesn't compromise the integrity of police and other investigations. But I've been crystal clear, if anyone has broken the rules, not upheld the standards that I would expect, then they will be held to account, they should face the full consequences of the law, and they will be booted out of the Conservative Party.
Can you see what this looks like to readers, to voters, to the public? It looks like the last days of Rome. It's nicking the candlesticks on the way out, isn't it? It just sums up everything that's kind of gone wrong with your government and 14 years of Tory government. And the first instinct that the people running your election campaign had as soon as they found out about it, was to fill their boots.
Harry, as I said, I share absolutely in people's... I'm as angry as anybody when I learnt about these things. Of course I am.
I think the voters are probably angrier.
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly angry about this. And the right thing to do, and again, you talked about that letter, to do things properly is to get to the bottom of what happened, to investigate things thoroughly. Now, we have to do that separately to the Gambling Commission, who don't report to me. I don't have the details of their investigation. We have to do that sensitively and carefully so that we don't compromise the integrity of a police and other investigations. But let me be clear. If we come across findings or information that warrants it, we will not hesitate to act. I've been crystal clear that I will hold people to account. I will kick whoever they are. If anyone has not upheld the standards that I expect, if they have broken the rules, they should face the full consequences of the law and they will be booted out of the Conservative Party. I couldn't be clearer about that.
One thing that's very obvious about this election campaign is there is a level of frustration and anger felt by the voting public to the Conservative Party. You've spoken about it yourself, and you've said that mistakes have been made and you understand people's frustrations. What mistakes stick out for you, and what frustrations do you think are justified?
Yeah, look, I'm out and about across the country all the time, and I very much sense people's frustrations with me, with the party, and just generally. It's been a very difficult few years. Right? We've had COVID, we had to recover from that, then we had a war in Ukraine, the impact on people's bills. Of course it hasn't been easy for anyone, and I actually got this job as a result of something that was a mistake, and I was very clear about it on the first day I came into this office when I acknowledged those mistakes, and I was here partly to bring back economic stability, and I'm glad that we've done that. But the key now at this election is about the future, right? As frustrated as people might be, right, this is not a by-election, this is not a referendum on the past, this is about the future, and the choice for everyone is clear. I want to build on the progress that we've made, keep cutting everyone's taxes, give people more financial security. I don't want their taxes to go up under a future Labour government. I want to crack on and keep reducing migration, get to net zero in a sensible way. These are all things I believe in, all things I want to deliver, and that's the future that I want to be talking about.
Do you understand that feeling that people have? It's something we hear time and time again from our readers. Nothing works. Got rivers full of sewage, schools full of crumbling concrete, potholes knocking out tyres and, left, right and centre. 14 years of Tory government, it feels like the country's falling apart. Why is that?
Well, of course it's been difficult the last few years, and that's made everything a bit more challenging, particularly the NHS, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But I also, look, I'm not for one second taking away from the things that you're saying, but I don't think it's right to say that we haven't made progress in 14 years. I simply don't believe that. Now, of course, that's what the Labour Party are going to say, but I'll just give you one example. Just one example. I think education, schools, is probably the most important thing a government can do to transform people's lives, is to provide every young person with a phenomenal education. And if you look at 14 years, what Conservatives have done, we've ensured that our school children in this country, in England, are not just the best readers in the United Kingdom, they're the best readers in the Western world. We've marched up all the international rankings for how well our school children are performing. Now, that's as a result of Conservative reforms done painstakingly over years, all opposed by the Labour Party. That's transforming millions of young people's lives. And that's just one thing I can point to. So, yes, of course not everything is perfect. Of course we haven't made as much progress as we would have liked to in some areas. But it's just simply not right to say that the record of the last 14 years is one where we haven't made progress.
One thing that we can, the 14 years is a long time. You were in power for two or three of those. We'll give you that. But one graph on your watch, and we've talked about this before, you know what I'm going to say. One graph on your watch that's going the wrong way consistently is your pledge to stop the boats. Since you made that pledge, 50,000 people have crossed the Channel. It is clear and unambiguously going the wrong way for you. I've asked you this before, and do you yet regret making that pledge of stop the boats, which was just so clearly impossible to do?
No, because I want people to know where I stand. I think illegal migration is unfair. I don't think it's right that people come to our country illegally, and I want to do everything I can to stop it. And you say that the progress we've made, let's be clear, right? Over the last 12 months, the numbers are lower than they were in the 12 months before.
18% higher this year already.
Well, hang on.
We're halfway through the year now.
But if you look at a full year, it's down on the year before. But I'm being clear, we haven't got the job done. The only way to do that is to make sure that we make it clear to everyone, if you come to our country illegally, you won't get to stay. You'll be removed. Now, if I'm your Prime Minister, the flights will go to Rwanda, people will be removed. Yes, they will.
When?
And the choice for everyone, they'll go in July. And the choice for everyone, the choice for all of you at the election is about the future. Either you believe illegal migrants should not be in our country, they should be removed to somewhere else, or with Keir Starmer, they're all going to be released, all the people we've detained, and they will be out on the streets. And that's a choice for everyone. Do you want illegal migrants on planes going elsewhere, or do you want illegal migrants out on your streets with Labour? That is the choice facing everyone at this election.
We're going to open up to the floor in a moment, but there's a huge amount of scepticism about your Rwanda plan. If you were so confident in doing it, why did you call an early election before the flights were taking off? I've been told by several sources, both legal and in Whitehall, that shortly before you called the election, you were told that the prospect of flights taking off in July was going to be severely hindered by massive amounts of legal action. Is that part of the reason that you decided to go early?
People have tried to frustrate this, starting with the Labour
But quite successfully, right?
They have for a long time.
That's why people don't believe the flights are going to go.
And what have I done? Every time when someone has tried to block it, I've kept going. Right? I've put new laws on the table. We've passed those laws. We've got a deal done with Albania. But this is about the future. I've got a plan. Right? If you think this is an issue, I've not heard from anyone an alternative plan. And by the way, actually, the last time we were having this conversation, what had just happened? 15 other European countries all agreed that our approach of removing people to a safe alternative was the right one. It's the only way you can stop this problem. You've got to remove the incentive for people to come in the first place. That's my plan. The Labour Party are going to release everyone we've detained, leave them out on the streets, do a deal
Keir Starmer will be here. We can ask him about that shortly. Let's have a question. Jonathan Taylor, the Sun's Cabinet's Home Secretary, former detective. What do you have to say to the Prime Minister?
Thank you, Harry. Yes, Prime Minister, it's interesting what you've just said about that. And we know that the election tends to centre around money, expenditure, where you're going to get money from, what cuts you're going to make. And on migration, we know that over 700,000 skilled, necessary migrants now are employed in the UK. But we've also got 4 million people in receipt of health benefits to stay at home. Surely this is sort of financially counterproductive.
So, John, it was John, wasn't it?
Jonathan,
completely agree with you. We've had a massive spiral in the welfare bill since COVID. It's gone up by 60%. Almost 800,000 more people who are of working age are now been signed off sick. Right? I don't think that's right. We were making great progress before the pandemic, and we need to get back to that. So we set out a plan to reform the system to do that, have people provide more medical evidence, reform how the sick note, fit note process works, because it's not working, make it clear that if you don't accept a job, when your job coach tells you there's a sensible job for you, you won't be able to keep receiving your benefits. All very common sense things, and that's going to help us make savings in our welfare budget, and we can use those to help cut your taxes and support people into work, because I completely agree with you. Everyone who can work should work. Our reforms are going to deliver that. And in contrast, again, because all elections are a choice, right, what has the Labour Party said? We think we can make savings in a welfare bill that's gone up as much as it has. £69 billion today we spend on people with ill health, disability benefits, at working age. The Labour Party think that you can't make 1 penny of savings from that bill. They don't think you can make 1 penny of savings. And that tells you the choice ahead of you at this election. If you think we can do something about this, we're the only people who are going to do that for you.
Prime Minister, the other part of Jonathan's question was about the record rate of legal migration. Do you regret not doing more when your people in your own cabinet, take Suella Braverman, for example, or Robert Jenrick, were encouraging you to go further and faster on capping legal migration 2 years ago, and now, in your manifesto, you're promising a cap on migration. Why didn't you do it when you had the opportunity to?
So we got on and delivered lower migration. I'm not going to defend the levels that I inherited, because they were just too high.
Yeah, but you could have done more earlier, right?
Well, hang on. Again, I've been Prime Minister for 18 months. Numbers were down last year, and this year, the number of visas that we issued for all the key categories were down by 30%. If you look at the forecasts, independent forecasts, not mine, we're forecast to halve net migration in 12 months because of the measures that I've already taken. By the way, the Labour Party opposed to all of those. And I want to go further. So I want to give all of you the certainty that it's going to keep coming down year after year, and that's why we're going to have a legal cap voted on in Parliament every year to guarantee that the numbers keep coming down.
Why didn't you do it when you had the chance?
Reform the welfare system and get people into work instead. That is the right approach for our country.
If it's the right approach for our country, why didn't you do it 18 months ago?
Because we've got the numbers down. We passed new rules that have kicked in to bring the numbers down.
Not in any meaningful way compared to the 745,000 people that came last year. Net migration.
Can you name me a single other year ever where we have reduced the number of visas by 30%?
Look, these numbers are on your watch, but it's clear that you were coming to slightly late to this.
You just said.
So whose fault is it that it's so high?
I've been Prime Minister for 18 months.
So Liz Truss's fault? Was it Boris's fault?
The numbers were too high.
Whose fault was it?
Well, the numbers were too high.
Oh, go on. If it's not your fault, whose fault was it?
Hang on. Well, obviously, look, if the numbers are too high, I've got the job and I brought them down. And you just said, oh, no, you haven't done very much. I'm saying, tell me another year where someone has reduced the number of visas issued by 30%. Never happened in our country before, because I took strict action. Give you one example. We raised the salary that you need to earn to be able to come here to work to £38,500. We've made the very reasonable point that actually if you're going to bring your family dependents to this country, you should be able to support them. economically. Again, I think that's a relatively common sense, reasonable approach. We've tightened up the social care visa, the student visa, where people were bringing lots of dependents to our country. They weren't working, they weren't accounted for. I made all those changes. The numbers are forecast to halve in 12 months as a result of them, right? And I want to go further with a legal cap and give you the guarantee that it will keep coming down. Again, the choice for you at this election is everything that I've just said, or a Labour Party that opposed all of those things, no cap, and Keir Starmer, who, back in the day when he was running to be leader, said he wanted to bring back free movement of people.
Well,
right?
Keir Starmer will be here shortly,
everyone.
and we can. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. let's open up. Change a different direction. Where's Fliss? Fliss Gilbert. Fliss, your question to the Prime Minister.
Hiya. So my dad passed away 6 weeks ago, yesterday, due to massive failure from the NHS. I believe the NHS is broken. We waited 9 months for a cancer diagnosis and a further 9 months for a metastatic cancer diagnosis. Before we got the diagnosis, he passed away. There was no treatment, no nothing. We feel like we've been let down. We feel like there are many more families that are struggling. We've been through 18 months of hell. What are you going to do to stop people suffering like we've had to? What are your pledges for the NHS?
Prime Minister.
Fliss, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad, and if you let me know afterwards which trust it was, I'll make sure that we look into it and someone gets in touch with you so we can find out what went wrong. I can't imagine how difficult that's been for you and your family. I think, as probably most of you know, I grew up in an NHS family. I know how important healthcare is. I've worked for my mum in the pharmacy, helping people myself. When it comes to cancer, the most important thing we can do is, as you highlighted, just diagnose it as soon as possible. And that's the best chance we've got of helping someone, getting them the treatment they need and make sure that they survive. And one of the ways we're doing that is by rolling out things called community diagnostic centres. So we've done 160, and if we're re-elected, we'll do many more. And these are units in your local community where you can get all your checks, tests and scans done, and that way get your diagnosis much quicker. We're hiring more oncologists, we're using technology as well and new forms of testing to identify things. But fundamentally, what happened to you and your family isn't acceptable. And I can only apologise. You know the challenges we're dealing with COVID. Cancer in particular was one where for 2 years, lots of people didn't present with symptoms, and we're catching up with that now, and that's an awful tragedy, one of the many tragedies of COVID. The key thing now is to just keep working through the backlog, and as I said, more oncologists, more community diagnostic centres, and new technology is going to help us build on what we're doing, which is improving the survival rates.
Fliss, has that allayed some of your concerns?
Not really. My dad, we actually referred him in the January, and it was the August that I actually took him myself to hospital, and I said, we cannot go through any more of this. He's lost nearly 8 stone in weight, other symptoms. I am not moving. I said, I'm so sorry, I know you're under pressure, but I am not moving until you take this seriously and you deal with my dad. And within a week, he was operated on, bits removed that were cancerous. So, yeah.
Prime Minister, we had readers sending in questions like this by the bucket load, I'm afraid. It's a real failing. What has gone wrong on your watch? I know, obviously the pandemic, but the buck does have to stop somewhere. And again, whose fault is this, and what can you do to turn this around in any meaningful way?
Obviously, it's my responsibility because I'm the one in charge, and I've been very clear. We haven't made as much progress on waiting lists as I would have liked. I mean, you talked about the pandemic. It's, I think, important for everyone to just understand the scale of what happened. During the COVID years, 6 million referrals that normally would have happened didn't happen. Just think about that, 6 million. Right. Now, the NHS today, because of the money we've put in, the doctors and nurses we've hired, is doing more than it's ever done. It's working flat out. The amount of treatments, checks, tests, scans, operations, all of that is at record levels. But obviously, it is just a challenge to work through the fact that we've got this 6 million missed referrals that obviously now are coming into the system and we're catching up on. And it is going to take time to work through that. I'm not going to pretend it can be fixed overnight, but I can assure you that the NHS budget will continue to increase ahead of inflation in the next Parliament. It's already at record levels. We've got more doctors and nurses and we're hiring more, and we're using new technology and new innovations to get you the healthcare that you need. So we're doing all the right things, but when you've had 6 million referrals that were missed and are going to take time to come back, it's just going to take a bit of time.
Thank you, Phyllis. Let's move on. Is Rayhan here? A question from Rayhan. Hi.
Thank you, Harry. Hi, Prime Minister. I'm a student about to enter the world of work, and I'm deeply worried about the housing crisis. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that you are comfortable with young people being forced to rent until they're in their 40s?
No, of course I'm not. Right? I want you to own your own home because it's an incredibly special thing. I remember what it felt like. I want everyone to feel like that because owning your own home is part of, what allows you to build a life, build a family, and gives you a stake in your community. It's something I passionately believe, and I want to make it easier for you. I'll tell you 2 very specific things that I will do for you and everyone else if I'm your Prime Minister on July 5th. One is to reintroduce a new form of help to buy, which means you won't have to save up as much for the deposit. It will save you tens of thousands of pounds. So that's a big issue with waiting till you're 40 to save up for the deposit. It will help solve that problem. And the second thing we're going to do is abolish stamp duty for first-time buyers, effectively. Right, there'll be a cap, but most people will be covered by it. And then again, that's going to save you thousands of pounds, and it's going to get you on the housing ladder far quicker. Because the challenge that I see when I talk to everyone of your age is actually they could probably afford the mortgage. Right? The challenge, I can see you nodding, right? The challenge is how long will it take me to save up the deposit? And the combination of a new help to buy and actually abolishing stamp duty means that you'll be able to get on the housing ladder far quicker. So it's 2 very specific things so you can own your own home. And again, I'll point this out because all elections are a choice. The Labour Party have said no to both of those things. Right? So you're only going to get those things if I'm your Prime Minister.
Talking of homeowners, is Linda here? Question about mortgages, I think.
Yes. Good evening, Mr Sunak.
Hi, Linda.
How do you feel about the very many people with mortgages struggling to pay bills or who have lost their homes because of the hike in the interest rates?
Yeah. Linda, look, we talked about it right at the beginning of this interview. That was my #1 priority when I got this job. Interest rates are at a very high level. And why were they at high level? Because inflation was at 11%. Haven't experienced anything like that in this country for decades. That's why I made it my #1 priority to bring inflation down, because that's what will then allow interest rates to come down. And as you've seen, inflation just got back to target just last week, which is very, very promising news. You heard from the Bank of England, so we're now on track to start seeing interest rates and mortgage rates be cut. And that's how I give you financial security.
How's that going to help the people who have lost their homes because the interest rate rises have gone so high they can't keep up with their bills, not just their mortgages but regular bills?
Well, all of this is about giving you financial security, which is why I want to keep cutting people's taxes so they have more money in their pockets at the end of every month. Now that we've got the economy in a better place, we started that at the end of last year. So this year, everyone in work is getting a tax cut. That's worth about £900 on average, so that will really help people with their bills as well as inflation coming down. And if I'm re-elected, we're going to go further and we're going to keep cutting your taxes at every stage in your life. So if you're in work, you'll keep getting more tax cuts. If you're self-employed, we're going to abolish national insurance, self-employed people. So all of that is going to put more money in everyone's bank account, give you financial security. But crucially, again, this is a choice, right? This election is a choice. We can build on the progress we've made, keep cutting taxes, or as I've been pointing out, if Keir Starmer is your Prime Minister, all of you are going to face higher taxes. That is not going to help anyone with any of the bills, Linda, that you're talking about if the Labour Party is taking more tax out of your bank account every month.
With respect, could I just say, it's not just the bills for regular living, for your regular everyday living. It's keeping a roof above your head. In the first quarter of this year, upwards of 97,000 people were in arrears with their mortgage. That's getting on for 100,000 people who could potentially be on the streets.
So to help people with mortgages, if you go and talk to your bank, what we put in place is a mortgage charter that covers the industry. So if you talk to your bank, what we've organised is for you to be able to get a holiday on your mortgage, move to an interest-only mortgage, stretch out the term. All of that you can do without affecting your credit rating. It can save you potentially hundreds of pounds a month in mortgage costs, which is really practical support, and your bank has to do that all for you if you like it. So that's the solution that we've put in place. The combination of those things, extending your term, moving to interest only, Those types of things will save you hundreds of pounds, enable you to keep your house, and the bank can't repossess your house. We've made that clear for a very prolonged period of time after you first told them that you're struggling. So all of those protections, we didn't have them in the past. They're new, something that the Chancellor negotiated with all the lenders in our country. So it's called the Mortgage Charter. If anyone's struggling with that, please talk to your bank and say that I said that that's what you're entitled to, because that's what you should be able to get.
Prime Minister, we're talking about solutions. Let's talk a step back a little bit. I think a lot of the anger that people feel about this government. Do you feel some responsibility for inflicting Liz Truss on the voters?
Excuse me?
Do you feel any responsibility for inflicting Liz Truss on the voters?
Look, we started this interview with that, right? I spent a couple of summers ago, saying that what Liz Truss was proposing was wrong. And I was behind, and everyone said to me, why are you bothering? Why are you still talking about this? No one wants to hear what you have to say. I kept talking about it every day of that campaign
why didn't
because I believed in what I was saying. Right? And I said very clearly I didn't think that was right for our country. Right? And I was very clear on the first day I got this job that mistakes had been made. I was right then when I warned about Liz Truss, and that's why all of you can trust me now when I also warn about the damage that Keir Starmer would do to our economy. Right? In that election, everyone said I was going to lose. I was saying something that no one wanted to hear, but I was saying it because I believed it. Right? And I'm telling you again now, all seems a bit familiar. If Keir Starmer's your Prime Minister, the economy is going to suffer and all of you are going to suffer. I don't want to see that happen. That's why I'm carrying on going every day in this election. I believe in what I'm saying and I want to stop those tax rises happening for all of you.
Do you ever wish you were... Do you ever wish, though, you were still the incredibly popular Chancellor that you were before, serving in the most electorally successful Conservative government since Thatcher? Was it worth it?
Well, I'm very proud of what we did in government. I was proud to have served in government, but I can't.
Would you do the same? Would you do the same? Would you do exactly the same over again? If you had your chance, would you take out Johnson and run the same campaign you ran against Truss and done the same things you've done since then? Or what would you like to change about your time?
Harry, I am focused on the future.
But people have a right to know whether you said you made mistakes and hear their frustrations.
And I am focused on the future, right? Because this election, as I said, of course we can talk about the past, and we have done, but for all of you, the choice for you is who do you want to run the country for the next 5 years, right? Who is placed to deliver the security that you and your families want? You have to ask yourself, as Kate said in the intro, right? I don't think any of you can tell me what Labour are going to do if they're in power, right? And when governments and politicians don't tell you, it's because they think you probably won't like it, right? And I'm telling you, your taxes are going to go up. It's as simple as that, right? And that's the choice for you. Can you afford £2,000 worth of tax rises? Can your family, can your loved ones? We heard from Linda about the challenge of bills, because that's what's coming down the track if Labour are in power. And that's why I want to fight very hard. That's the choice of this election.
Last October, you were the one that said there'd been, attacked in a speech, 30 years of failed political consensus. The Tory party have been in power for half of that 30 years. You've opened up the door to your record, to the government's record. It doesn't bear much scrutiny, though, does it?
Yeah, Harry, it really does.
Look, I'm another 5 years, but you're saying that the last 30
we went over this earlier, right? And so I'm not going to pretend that we've got everything right. Of course we didn't, right? No government does. Of course, I'd wish we'd made more progress on areas. And I know the last few years have been particularly frustrating, given everything that's happened. But I'm not going to sit here and say that 14 years hasn't made this country a better place. Let's just go back 14 years. What happened? We were left a note by the Labour Party laughing about the fact that there was no money left in this country. They had bankrupted this country. And what have we done since then? We've delivered the third highest growth rate of all the large major economies in the world. We've created 800 jobs a day. We talked about our children. We've halved crime, and there's more to do on all these things. We've increased defence spending so that we can stand tall in the world. I mean, I could go on and on and on, right? The point is, that's 14 years. There's lots of things that would have made a difference to you, some things you would have wished we'd have done differently, but this election is about the future. Right? If you want your taxes cut, if you want your pension protected, if you want to get to net zero in a sensible way that doesn't saddle you with bills, if you want action on legal migration, on stopping the boats, I am the only person who is going to deliver that for you, and that is the choice at this election.
Before you go, Prime Minister, our time is coming to an end. The polls would suggest this election hasn't gone brilliant for you, from D-Day to this betting scandal we've talked about. Even the weather at one point seemed to be against you. Do you regret calling the election early? Do you not think another 6 months might have helped you turn it around?
No, because we touched on it earlier. Right? When I got this job, my number one priority was to get the economy in a strong position. And That's what we've been able to do over the last 18 months, get inflation back to target, get the economy growing, wages rising, energy bills falling. So this is the moment for all of you to decide what future you want for our country. And I want you to have that opportunity. And I'm very passionate and confident in what I am saying. I believe what I'm saying is right for our country and right for all of you. I think you do want all your taxes cut because you all work very hard. You deserve to keep more of your money. I want everyone to own their own home like Rayhan, so I want to cut taxes on him. We haven't heard from, I think, any pensioners tonight, but if I'm not your Prime Minister, for the first time in history, pensioners are going to face a retirement tax on their state pension in this country.
Because
if I'm not your Prime Minister. And we're going to create the triple lock plus to make sure that doesn't happen.
That's your tax, though. You froze the income tax thresholds that's dragged people into paying a higher rate of tax.
Harry, in the next Parliament, if I'm not your Prime Minister, every pensioner is going to be paying a retirement tax for the first time in this country's history. That won't happen if I'm your Prime Minister. If I'm not your Prime Minister, you're all going to be paying thousands of pounds to upgrade your home, switch out your boiler, change your car, because Keir Starmer's going to reverse all the changes I made so we get to net zero in a sensible way. Those illegal migrants will not be on planes to Rwanda. They will be out on our streets putting pressure on public services. And, by the way, I can tell you now, they are queuing up in Calais waiting for a Starmer government so they can come here and stay here.
Oh,
that is the choice.
800 migrant crossings in a day are happening on your watch, not Keir Starmer's.
So that is a choice at this election, right? I know people are frustrated about lots of things, but you've got to focus on that choice ahead of you and think about the next 5 years, think about what I'm saying, allow me to deliver all those things I just talked about for you.
Prime Minister, we're nearly at the end of our time, but how has it affected you? You're quite a Tiggerish person. You're quite energetic. I think that no one would doubt you that. But you seem a little bit off kilter since D-Day, really. How has it affected you personally? It feels like the sort of fight's gone. What's happened?
That's not right. I don't know. It's a fight hasn't gone. We've had a very Tiggerish conversation. No, look, I am very passionate about this for a very simple reason, right? Like my grandparents came to this country with very little, right? And here I am, 2 generations later, sitting here with the enormous privilege of being our country's Prime Minister, right? I will never be able to repay that debt. Everything that this country's done for me and my family is extraordinary. And that's why I do this job. Because I love this country. I'm so grateful to everything that it's done for me. And if you give me the honour of continuing to be your Prime Minister, I will work my socks off for you to deliver for all of you and make your lives better. That's what I'm in this for, and that's why I have the energy to keep going.
Prime Minister, thank you very much. Thank you for coming in, Alex. Thank you for the questions. Stay right there.
I'm staying here.
Now, before I let the energetic Prime Minister bounce away, before I speak to the Leader of the Opposition too, let's cross now to the Sun's Kate Ferguson for a post-match analysis. Kate, what did you think?
Hi, Harry. Yes, thanks. Well, joining me in the studio to dissect that interview is Education Secretary and Tory MP Gillian Keegan and Jonathan Ashworth, Labour's Shadow Paymaster General. Thanks both for joining me in the studio. Gillian, the PM looked awkward when he was getting that mauling on the Get Betting scandal we've just talked about. How much of a hammer blow is that for you guys at this stage of the election?
I mean, it's not helpful, right? And he's obviously angry about it. And, you know, it's stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why probably. But, you know, at this point, what you can do is say, you know, we do some internal inquiries, we rely on the Gambling Commission. But I think what was clear for me throughout that whole interview is it sort of shines through his experience, his determination. I mean, he's taken lots and lots of things since he's been Prime Minister. It has not been an easy time. And every single time, he basically sorts it out, he gets it solved. And, you know, and it's just clear to me how much he cares, but how much his experience shines through.
Jonathan, you must be sitting back thinking you've got it easy. This gambling scandal must be getting you through the home straight, mustn't it?
I'm not sure about that. Did you put a bet on?
Of course I didn't.
You didn't put a bet. So we
Jonathan, have you ever put a political bet on?
I don't think I have. No, I mean I've been to. I've been to Leicester races and I didn't win anything. But gambling's in my blood. My dad works in a casino. My mum was a Playboy bunny girl, but I don't.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exciting.
But I didn't know. I'm not a gambler.
No.
Really. Look, I mean. It was a desperate performance from Sunak, and I think in the end...
Say something nice,
in the end, well, I will say that, I'm going to say lots of nice things, but in the end, you could see from the audience that there is a yearning for change in this country. And if you want to change this for the better after 14 years of failure, you've got to vote Labour. But on this gambling...
They don't want change for change's sake. You need to have plans in government.
We've got plans. But on this gambling issue...
Jonathan, quickly.
On this gambling issue, I think... Rishi Sunak's failure to suspend these people, one of them, his henchman, has admitted he made an error of judgment. Rishi Sunak's failure to suspend them shows how weak he is. He's so weak, he couldn't knock the skin off a rice pudding. That's how weak
well, there
he
you
is.
go,
You're using Boris lines. That's how weak you are.
Okay, well, we heard also, didn't we, Jonathan, from the PM, saying that if you guys get into government, you're going to drop a tax bomb on Brits. You are, aren't you? Don't Labour always raise taxes?
More desperate lies. Look,
Always
this
taxes and
this
always
lot,
unemployment.
This lot are taxing
That's all
people
they
so
do.
much that the pips are squeaking because how much this
The
lot...
pips are squeaking.
This lot are taxing people.
We have to pay for the pandemic, right?
So
We
you admit
all
you
know that.
admit you're taxing people.
We all
Highest tax
know
burden
that
for
we have to
70
pay
years.
the pandemic, although
So
we
there you
have
have it.
reduced it on the
Tory admits that the people are paying
don't
more
put
in
words
tax.
in my mouth, and if you point at me, you're taking your life in your
Oh,
hands.
I know that. We don't need to bring the. We don't have to bring the
But you know,
Bowsers in.
here's the thing. What we've done, and we know the pandemic's cost us 400 billion, but what we've done is made sure that we've protected the lowest paid and the average worker, so they are paying less effective
Paying
tax
more on their
rates.
mortgage,
And
more in the
we've
shops,
reduced
more on
their
their energy
tax.
bills.
I want to ask.
We've reduced their
I wanna
tax,
ask
and
one-
we've reduced inflation.
Okay,
These aren't
just-
easy
Prices
things
are
to
still
do.
up.
I want to ask one other
They're
thing.
coming down.
lot.
All right, all right.
There'll be more skint because the tax rises that they will put in place.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, also we heard the
Absolutely.
PM use this quite neat line, I thought. They'll be queuing up in Calais.
Yeah, 'cause they've got
when
no
they hear
plan.
there's a Starmer government. Is that right, Jonathan?
Absolute
Well, what's
rubbish.
your plan?
More desperate rubbish.
But what's
from
your
Rishi
plan
Sunak.
to stop the votes,
50,000 since he became
Yeah, but
Prime
what's your
Minister.
plan?
We're
We
gonna-
know the problem because we
we're-
can all see the problem, and the problem.
We know the problem is that we've got a Prime
massive
Minister who's
across-
hopeless at getting a grip of it. That's
No,
the
no.
problem.
The problem is it's across every country in the world, and if you're really serious about solving it, you'd really be serious about understanding it. There's two factors: organised crime and phones. Everybody now
Phones.
has a phone and can see what's on offer everywhere. 15 billion phones in
Do they not have phones in Rwanda then?
They have phones everywhere,
Including
and everyone
Rwanda?
can see the differences.
Well, if they have
Plus
phones in Rwanda, how does Rwanda
organised-
fix it?
And
Okay,
they have
we're gonna-
organised criminals, so it's creating
Exactly.
a demand.
All right,
Which is
Gillian-
why we're going to
Gillian
go
and
after the
Jonathan,
criminal
We need
gangs.
to have a plan.
Which is
and
why we've got a plan to go
deterrent.
after the criminal gangs.
Okay,
We have-
Gillian and Jonathan, I've got
have
to
small boat
I've got to
commands.
stop you. We're going
We
to
have
come
small
back
boat
later.
commands.
I've got to stop
We
you
have
because
that in place.
I am hearing that Harry is ready for
No
the
new
next
plans for you.
interview, Gillian, with this time it's Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer under the microscope.
plan.
So thank you, Jonathan and Gillian.
You might want to pull
We're
those
going
two.
over to you, Harry, now.
You might want to pull those two apart. They look like they're going to carry on arguing even when the cameras are gone. Right, thanks, Kate. Indeed, Sir Keir Starmer is here. The man that could be, in a matter of days, Britain's next Prime Minister. How are you feeling?
Got a lot of work to do. I know we've got to earn every vote, and I won't stop working until 10 o'clock on Thursday week.
And then what are you doing? Go down the pub?
That would be very nice. That would be very... But look, I mean, I've spent 4.5 years changing the Labour Party, getting us to a position where we can put our positive case before the electorate. So I'm pleased to be doing it, but I don't take anything for granted, so every single vote has to be earned, and only be earned if we get the trust and confidence of people through our positive case for the future of our country.
Trust and confidence is something that's going to come up, I think, a lot for if the readers' questions were anything to go by. Last week, you said that Jeremy Corbyn, your old mate, would have been better PM than Boris Johnson. What would Jeremy Corbyn have done better in the UK's response to the war in Ukraine than Boris Johnson, given that you are going to basically take that policy wholesale and carry it on?
Yeah, let me do something that I don't very often do.
Oh, no. No, don't be worried.
Praise Boris Johnson because
Wow.
I didn't agree with him on lots of things, and I thought the way he conducted himself in Partygate was a disgrace, and he got kicked out of Parliament. But to be fair, on Ukraine, he took a strong position. I was leader of the opposition, and I said we will support the government. And so there's been unity in Parliament from the outbreak of that conflict and Russia aggression there. And I thought that was important. Boris Johnson thought it was important because I think we both took the view that the only winner, if there was a split in our politics here in the UK, would be Putin. He wanted to see division in other countries, and we didn't allow him. So I do think, and I've also supported Rishi Sunak on this, and Liz Truss for the brief time that she was Prime Minister, and I still continue to do so. So even where there might be small disagreements between us, I think it's in the national interest, the country's interest, that we speak with one voice on something as important as Ukraine, and we will continue to do so. And I've had the opportunity to meet President Zelensky. I went to Kyiv to see him, to say, should there be a change of government, there won't be any change in the support for Ukraine, because I think it's fundamental for Ukraine and for our own freedom here in this country.
Let me put it another way, then. Would it have helped or hindered our response to the crisis in the Middle East to have a Prime Minister who praised Hamas as a friend and literally dined with its senior leadership?
Well, Harry, I don't think the choice at the last election was a good choice. I accept
But you backed Jeremy Corbyn.
I didn't.
You said his manifesto embodied decency and hope.
Harry, I didn't think we would win. I don't think we're in a position to win. But what's happened with Jeremy Corbyn, look at my leadership on this. I picked up the Labour Party. I recognise many people had not voted for us last time, possibly people in this room, and I said we're never going to put that proposition in front of the electorate again. I'm not going to tell to the electorate, what do you think you're doing? I'm going to say to my party, we need to shake this up and change it. So I've changed the Labour Party. So there's a fundamentally different choice at this election. And Jeremy Corbyn not only lost the whip as Labour MP, he's now been expelled from the Labour Party. No Labour leader has ever done anything as serious as that about changing his or her party before. And so I'm really proud of the fact that I'll be judged on the last 4.5 years. I've picked this party up, I've changed it, and now I hope that there is a Labour Party which people feel that they can vote for this time in a way which I accept wasn't the case last time round. And I don't look at the electorate and say, you were wrong in 2019. I look at my party and say, we were wrong,
let's hear from
that's
the
why
electorate.
we've changed.
Nick, I think you've got a question about just this.
I do, yeah.
Nick.
It's okay. As Harry's been pointing out, you told us in 2019 that Jeremy Corbyn was great, but apparently, you know, it didn't matter because you didn't think he was going to win. And that means you're happy to lie to us then. How do we know that you're not lying now?
Well, let me deal with that in terms of the trust issue. I worked in Northern Ireland, as you may or may not know, with others on transforming the police service in Northern Ireland so that it would have the confidence of both communities. I said I'd work on that. I said we would change it. We delivered. I then ran the Crown Prosecution Service, and I said we need to change to deliver a better outcome, particularly on violence against women and girls. I said it, I did it. I came into the Labour Party and I said, we got it wrong in 2019 and I'm going to change this party. And I've had to be really tough to do that, and I've delivered it. What I'm asking for now is the opportunity to pick our country up, which is as broken as my party was in 2019, and change it for the better so that everybody across the country benefits from that. So my track record is to come in to say, I know what the problem is. It may be difficult, but I'm going to do it. And when I started as Labour leader, most people said it is not possible to get the Labour Party back to a position where it can put a credible proposition before the country. Said it isn't going to happen, you can't do it, Keir. I never believed that. I've delivered that change. I don't think anybody now says this is the same Labour Party as 2019. What I now want, humbly ask for the opportunity to take a country which I do think has been broken under this government. Is anything better now than it was when they started? To take that opportunity to rebuild our country and take us forward. And that's why I came into politics. I was a lawyer doing
Nick,
other
come
things.
back. Is this convincing you? Is this CV and a passionate plea convincing you?
I'll be generous and say that I would hope that you weren't wholehearted with your endorsement of Mr Corbyn in 2019, but you can tell me anything now.
He's been
but
expelled.
at the time, Sir Keir, this is a matter of trust. It's not about now, it's about then. Who were you lying to? Were you lying to yourself, or you were just lying to Jeremy Corbyn?
Look, we were campaigning in 2019 for Labour. I was campaigning for Labour. I was an MP. I wanted to be elected back into Parliament. I wanted to campaign for good colleagues who are now on my front bench.
But some of those people on your front bench didn't serve Corbyn. Rachel Reeves, Wes Streeting, they sat that one out.
Yeah.
You were there till the bitter end. Until then, suddenly you weren't. So, can you not understand why people are baffled by this fundamental shift you've had?
I understand that, and let me address it. I didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn to be leader of our party in 2015. I didn't vote for him to be leader in 2016. I supported other candidates. But our membership returned him as the leader. That was very difficult for me and for our party because I thought that we were not going to be heading in the right direction. Everybody then took a decision about what they did, how we dealt with this. I felt that on issues such as Brexit, which I thought were going to define us for decades to come, leaders are temporary, but political parties are permanent, that it was important to have a voice in the shadow cabinet. And it meant that I could challenge on anti-Semitism, and it meant that the Labour Party never veered from its position on things that are fundamentally important, like NATO. Now, I accept other colleagues did different things, but I knew, everybody knew, there was always going to be a day after when we would have the opportunity for a new leader of our party and to make sure our party was there to face the future. And I'm proud of the fact that I was able then to win the leadership of the party and to put it back in front of you now as a fundamentally different party.
You're even more energetic than Rishi Sunak today. He's normally the one that never stops. But on that point, let's drill down to that point. You said you stuck around to change things from the inside. But you failed, didn't you? You tried to keep free movement, you tried to stop Brexit, you tried to go for a second referendum. You couldn't even stand up to Jeremy Corbyn.
No, look, I have fundamentally changed this party.
But at the time, if you were sticking around, you weren't doing a very good job, were you? Because all the things you wanted to do, he was running down in a different direction.
The Labour Party signed the treaty setting up NATO. Yeah. So if you go to Brussels, it's got a Labour...
Jeremy Corbyn wanted to leave the treaty.
Just hear me out, Harry. We were founding members of NATO, which I fundamentally believe in terms of our national security. And whoever has been a leader of the Labour Party, including Jeremy Corbyn, I have never let them move away from NATO. So we never veered away from NATO. We needed to have people in and fighting for the future of our party. Now, some people were on the back benches, some were on the front benches, but we were all in one fight, which was to make sure we had a Labour Party
at the time
capable of winning an election in the future. I had those battles on NATO.
Couldn't it have been better to say that a little bit, or at least give a little hint that you weren't exactly that happy, rather than saying he embodied hope and decency?
On anti-Semitism, I spoke out in the shadow cabinet, directly confronting Jeremy Corbyn.
But not to the voting public.
I did. No, that's not right. I did. I was out on the airways also saying the same thing.
You could vote with your feet rather than just, going on to do the Today programme.
Harry, we did different... We were trying to ensure that the day after Jeremy Corbyn, there was a Labour Party which we could pick up and change and put it back. The Labour Party has done incredible things. We set up the NHS. We've done incredible things on equality, Sure Start, that made a massive difference to people's lives. I'm proud of my party, and I knew there'd be a day after where we needed to pick our party up, to say to the electorate in 2019, we got this wrong, and rebuild. And we were all working to that end. I'm glad we had that opportunity, because I genuinely think now at this election, there is a choice. The Prime Minister was saying there's a choice. We've had 14 years now of chaos, of division and failure, and it's not going to change, because if you think their election campaign is anything other than chaos and division, it is characterising them, that isn't going to change. Or we can turn the page and start to rebuild our country with a Labour government. And the sooner, in my view, we can get on with that, the better for millions of people. I think most people, if you ask them the question, do you now feel better off than you were 14 years ago? Most people would say no. Or is the NHS better now than it was? Are our public services better than they were? Most people would say no to those questions. We have to turn this around.
Do you regret... Do you stand by exactly how you behaved entirely through the Corbyn years, or sometimes do you think you could have done it a little differently? Just hand on heart, head on the pillow.
I've reflected on this. I think it was right to fight. I think in my case it was right to fight from within the shadow cabinet.
Even though you lost all the big battles on
Well,
Brexit.
we didn't lose the battle on
NATO. We left the EU
ever.
for one. You didn't want to do that.
No, I voted for Remain. I wanted to remain, but now we've left and there's no going back. But, sorry? No, I'm not. No, that is not our policy, never has been our policy. I voted for Remain, but we voted to leave. We're out. I accept that. We're not going back.
Do you not see here...
But we do need... We've got a very botched deal. If you talk to any business that's trying to trade, they will tell you it's not good enough. I think we can do more on defence and security, by the way, with our European partners, but we're not going back in. We're not going back into the single market, the customs union, and we're not going back to freedom of movement. That is very, very clear and set out in our manifesto, because we did have a referendum. It split us down the middle, and we do not want to go through that again. We are not going back in.
For the people that didn't hear, a reader from the floor, I didn't see it, was suggested that Sir Keir would take us back into the EU. But that's the fundamental thing, isn't it? You say one thing and people don't believe what you say, because you said, Jeremy Corbyn's great, and now you're saying he's the worst thing since, well, not sliced bread, whatever the opposite is.
I actually voted for the Brexit deal. And, you know, so I voted with my feet on this, notwithstanding I personally had voted to remain because I accepted the outcome and I walked through the lobby in support of the deal that Boris Johnson put on the table. I don't think it's good enough. I do actually think we can do better than that, but we are not going back in because we're not going to reopen what was actually a pretty awful period for us politically. Between 2016 and 2019, I think, in Parliament, we were arguing about nothing else. And I think many people in this room and across the country, by the time it came to 2019, said, for heaven's sake, we've got to move forward. I agree with that, and we're not going back.
We can I'm sure, touch on Brexit again in a moment, but another big issue, and not a million miles away from that one. Jonathan, you asked Rishi Sunak a very similar question, but you have a question for Sir Keir Starmer.
Jonathan.
Sir Keir, yeah, Rwanda. There we are, another word that's been bandied around, and we talk about illegal immigration here. Now, you have said that if you get in, then you will reverse that. There will be no Rwanda deal, which is fine, but deportation of illegal immigrants is a physical process.
Yeah.
They arrive with no passports, so the process can't really begin. It's going to be long drawn out, but they are illegal immigrants into this country. If it is a physical process, what are the Labour Party going to do to actually deport these people, and where to?
Yeah, well, but thank you for raising that, because this is a really serious issue. As Harry put to Rishi Sunak, the numbers this year of people crossing in small boats are record numbers under this government, and nobody should be making that journey across the Channel. Nobody. It's a breach of our borders. It's also, I think, a matter of national security, because the government should be deciding who comes to this country, and we need to know who it is that's coming to this country. So we have to deal with it. I take it very seriously. I accept it's a test of government, which I think they're failing, but it is a test of anybody who wants to be in government. And I've looked very carefully at this. There are criminal gangs that are running this trade, making a fortune putting people in those boats, and we have to take those gangs down. Now, Jonathan, before I was a politician, I was the chief prosecutor for England and Wales for 5 years, prosecuting all of the cases in our criminal courts in England and Wales. But I had to deal with things like terrorism, where there were very serious gangs running terrorism, sometimes in this country, which we had to smash, but also involving countries in Europe. We put together law enforcement, police, security and intelligence teams, and we took those gangs down. These were very sophisticated terrorist gangs. I do not accept that it's impossible to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. And that's why, in the first few days of government, if we're privileged to come in to serve, we will set up a border security command, a new command, with counter-terrorism powers to work on that. I've done it before. I know how it's done. I think it can be done again, and that way we can stop people coming here in the first place. On the question of returns, because you raised that, which is very important, the number of people being returned to where they came from has dropped off by 44% under this government. So on the first few days in government, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put the staff back in the returns unit. I'll make sure that we've got planes going off, not to Rwanda, because that's an expensive gimmick. They will go back to the countries where people come from. That's what used to happen.
Where I mean, it's so hard to do.
Well, at the moment, people coming from countries like Bangladesh are not being removed because they're not being processed.
You're still not going to stop the boats.
Well, the only way to stop the boats is to smash the gangs that are putting people in boats in the first place.
Is it really the only way,
Fundamentally
because the National Crime Agency have made very clear, that a deterrent is also required. Not just the work they're already doing, and there is already a border command, really, isn't there, in the Home Office?
No,
you want to bring in, I accept you want to bring in the security services, who are already stretched, but I accept you want to widen it. But isn't the point you need a deterrent? You need a deterrent as well as the returns. That is what the experts are saying.
Yeah, but
what's your deterrent going to be?
A deterrent to not go to Rwanda. At the moment, people know that if they get here, they're basically here for life.
Well, that's what
because
you said,
they're not being processed.
The problem is...
No, hear me out, Harry. This is really important. Tens of thousands of people are here not processed. They're here for life. That's not a deterrent. If it was a deterrent, the numbers wouldn't be going up. They're going up.
Just one thing on that. They arrive and they have destroyed their passports and identification documents, so they cannot be processed.
Yeah.
So where are you going to send them to if you don't know where they've come from?
At the moment, some of them are processed.
Well, Sir Keir, I'm going to give you a stat. Let me give you a stat.
Let me deal with that, because it's a really important point, and I respect it. Under the last Labour government, we were returning people to their country of origin. Of course it's difficult. Of course you've got to establish where they came from. But you can return people to their country of origin in very many cases. The number being returned has gone down 44%, and we need to address that. But the most important thing, in my view, is stopping people coming in the first place. We've got to stop this trade across the channel.
Talked about smashing the gangs.
This is... No, I know. That's why we need to work with other countries. When we had terrorists... I mean, I take your point, sir, completely.
Yeah.
When we had terrorist gangs operating, they too were operating across European countries. So we worked with other countries in Europe. We shared intelligence, we shared data. I've been in the room when we've done this. We shared a strategy for then arresting everybody in different countries at exactly the same time, because you can't arrest someone
Just for the rest of the audience who can't hear, the gentleman in the audience said that the gangs aren't in this country, so how are you going to do it?
Yeah, no, they're not, and that's why we need to set up this border security command, which will operate across different countries. But just to explain, in the terrorist cases, which is why I passionately believe we can do this, we shared the data, each country, as to what they knew, the intelligence, all sitting in one room with with big data panels, then agreed a strategy, how we're going to take this gang down, then an arrest strategy, because if the French authorities don't arrest someone at exactly the same time as the authorities in Germany or London, then it doesn't work. Yeah. I've seen that done in relation to terrorist cases. I simply don't accept people who say the only gangs that can't be taken down are apparently these smuggling gangs. I don't accept that. I think it can be done. I've seen it. I've been part of it, which is why I'm confident it can be done. I agree we've got to do things on returns, but the first thing we've got to get security back to our borders, because at the moment the government's lost control of our borders.
Your policy currently is to process... I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're going to process everyone who's already here. Is that correct?
We need to process people.
Because you're going to abolish the bills that the acts the government have passed.
Yeah.
There is a 65% grant rate on asylum proposals. If you were a migrant, I know we're not allowed to talk about betting in politics, but if you were a migrant, you'd take those odds, wouldn't you? 65% chance of getting here and staying. You basically, by saying you're going to process everyone, you're creating a draw effect, aren't you?
The odds at the moment are 100%. Because this government is not... Now, hear me out, Harry, this is really important. This government is not processing the claims.
But you've said you're going to process all of those people who are currently not able to...
There are 50,000 people here not being processed. If we carry on with Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, it will get to 100,000 by the end of the year. They're not being processed. The one thing we know if you're not processed is you can't be returned anywhere. So you're staying here. Who's paying for the accommodation for those 50,000? You are. Who's paying the hotel bills? You are. Are we going to do this forever? This is such an absurd position for the government to have got in. At the moment, all of those who shouldn't be here should be sent back. Many more were sent back under the last Labour government. At the moment, the number being sent back, if you're not processed, the one thing you can't do is send people back, is a 0% under this government. And you are paying the bill. I think this is outrageous. You're paying the bills in hotels for people not to be processed who can't... They're here for life at the moment, and that's why it's not a disincentive. If it was a disincentive, why are more people coming this year than last year? It's record numbers. I mean, the Prime Minister said that even passing the Rwanda legislation, and him saying it will bring the numbers down, it's had the complete opposite effect, because people know if they can get here by any means at all, they're not going to be processed, they're going to be in a hotel paid for by you. What's not to like? How can that possibly be thought to be an incentive or disincentive for people to come here? It's not working, and we've got to wake up to the fact that it's not working.
You've made the point.
Put in place a border security command that can
You've talked about your borders,
the breach of the borders
brass plaque already. Come on, let's move on. Let's change the subject, shall we? I mean, you can understand people's anger out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I think we have Zoe. Where's Zoe? Hi, Zoe.
Hello.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Keir. When working parents of privately schooled children can't afford to send their children to private schools anymore because you're going to tax them twice, how are already struggling state schools going to cope?
Thank you for raising this, and for everybody who probably does know this. I accept that many families, parents, work hard and save hard to send their children to private school because they've got aspirations for their children and they think that's the best place for their child. And I've got nothing against that, nothing against private schools, and I completely understand that for some parents that's quite hard to do because there's not a lot of money going around. But I genuinely believe that every single parent has aspiration for their children across the whole country, including every single parent who sends their children to state school. And this is really important. And at state secondaries at the moment, we don't have enough teachers in core subjects like maths. Now, my boy's just done GCSEs, and so I know that if you don't have a maths teacher, at the moment they've got, in many schools, supply teachers or PE teachers doing maths. That means you don't do as well in your exams. That will inhibit you in your A-levels and apprenticeship. So we've got to recruit the numbers of teachers we need in our state secondary schools, which is why we're going to get rid of the tax break, which it is for private schools, and use it to fund the teachers we need in our state secondary schools. That is a tough choice. It's a difficult choice. I do understand parents who have worked really hard. I would just additionally say this. The schools don't have to pass this on to the parents. The schools could absorb the cost themselves. But if you ask me, am I going to make a choice to make sure that every single child, whatever their background, wherever they come from, and whichever school they goes to, has the right opportunity for core subjects like maths, I'm going to make the choice every single time to make sure that every child has that chance, every single child, whatever their background.
So, thank you. We're going to rattle through a few different subjects now. Dr. Pasha, Sun's Health Secretary, someone you've met before, Sir Keir.
Nice to see you again.
Dr. Pasha, what's your question? What's your first question? I think you've got two.
Yes. I'm glad I wasn't the one to mention the word lie, but it has been said in the room so far. You have said that you would rather a family member die in the NHS than have them treated privately. Now, I find this
No, I
claim...
didn't say that. I did not say that.
You did make a point, though, that you'd choose NHS care over private care.
Yeah, please, when you finish your question, but I did not say that.
I find this slightly disingenuous.
I didn't say it.
OK. Well, you said you would rather the NHS than private, and I feel like that's disingenuous because, A, you have talked about leaning into the private sector to bring down the waiting list, and B, if you're so committed to the NHS as it is, how can you be the man to bring radical reform to it?
Well, I think as we discussed last time, as you know, my wife works in the NHS. She's in one of the big London hospitals, so this is a constant discussion between us. My mum was a nurse. My sister was a nurse.
Are you the man to bring radical reform to the NHS?
Can I just correct what I did say? Because it is important that we just... I was asked whether if me or a family member was on a waiting list, I would pay to effectively jump the list and get in first for a private operation. And I said no. Because waiting lists are now, nearly 8 million. It's absolutely shocking numbers. And the idea that the person who wants to be Prime Minister of this country would say, it's my responsibility, and it will be, it's not my mess, but it'll be my responsibility to deal with it, is going to say to the nation, I will get your waiting list down, but in the meantime, I'm going to jump the queue.
Is that just because you're a politician or just as a person?
No. I'll give you the example of this. I'm a very keen footballer. I still play at my age. And a few years ago, I damaged my knee. My meniscus got torn. Really, really painful. Stopped me playing. I went to the NHS. They put me on a waiting list like everybody else, and I waited my turn and had it fixed, and I'm back playing football. I'm very grateful for that. So I didn't say if one of my children was going to die. What I would say about acute care, because, I mean, you'll know this, if you're dealing with acute care... My mum was very, very ill all of her life. I spent a lot of my teenage years in high dependency units with my mum on nights we thought we were going to lose her because she was so ill. And it absolutely seared on me what the NHS did for my mum. I know, and everybody knows, that for acute cases, life-threatening cases, the NHS is the very best place to be. So much so that private hospitals, in fact, refer into the NHS at that point because the NHS has got the expertise and the facility. So no, I wouldn't jump the queue. I wouldn't say to the rest of the population, you can be on a waiting list, give me time to fix it, but I'm going to speed myself through. I'm not going to look people in the eye and say, that's not me. If a family member was in an acute, life-threatening situation, I would want them in the NHS because I know from personal experience the NHS is absolutely the best place to be if there's a life-threatening situation. That is my genuine view on this.
Just to be clear, though, on that point, because I think it baffles some people who say, just to be clear, if going private was an option to save a loved one, your ideology towards the NHS would not stop you. That's just, I think that's what the confusions came from when you first said it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I've been through life-threatening situations with my mum many, many times, holding her hand on nights we thought we were going to lose her. Too many times to not know exactly what that feels like. We had to go through it again, tragically, with my wife's mum in the leadership campaign, and we lost her in that particular case. I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to acute care in high dependency units. I know what it looks like, I know what it feels like, and I absolutely know it's the best place if you've got a life-threatening situation. Look, I'm not going to say to other people that's the choice that they should make, and the bigger choice, the bigger discussion that we're not really having here, which is important, is why are so many people having to now go private because they're having to wait so long on the NHS? Because the hard-working people were having to use their money, their savings, for operations which they ought to be able to get on the NHS much more quickly. It's the hidden tax in the NHS that we've got from this government. I want to end that. But my own I mean, that's my choice based on my experience, mainly on my mum, I accept, but I do know what the inside of a high dependency unit looks like.
We are running out of time, and your aides will shout at me if we go on too much.
No, they won't, Harry.
Dr. Patrick, I think you had one more quick question. Very quick. We'll keep it tight. Keep it quick.
Question. Why are you trying to make it easier for people to change or switch their gender identity without sufficient proof? And what does this say to women's spaces and protecting them and their spaces?
Keir.
Women's spaces must be protected. It's very, very important. And again, when I was Chief Prosecutor, I was working with very many people who had been victims of sexual violence and domestic violence. It was a big part of the work I was doing. And I saw for myself how important those women's spaces are, and they must be protected.
Why?
Whether it's in that area, whether it's single-sex wards or sport, that must be protected. We mustn't go down the route of self-identification. But we do need to recognise the procedure or the process at the moment is not dignified. There are some people who don't identify with the gender that they're born into. They are very distressed by that. And my rule in life is to treat everybody with respect and dignity, and that's what I will do. But we must protect safe spaces.
Sir Keir, we're approaching the end of our time. Why do people like J.K. Rowling think that you've accused you of abandoning women, Labour of abandoning women? What's gone wrong there?
Look, I respect what she says, and I think I welcome the debate.
She said that Labour are behaving like a husband who's cheating on his wife but expects her to be OK with it because he always takes the bins out.
Well, look...
What do you think she meant by that?
Well, look, I actually do really respect what she said. I've looked
at it very, very... Are you meeting with her? Are you going to try and bring her back? She used to be a Labour donor.
Of course I'd meet with her. Of course I would. And you know, again, my approach in life... I came into politics really late. I'm not as tribal as everybody else. I've run on operations. I ran a public service. My view is, if there's an issue or a challenge, roll up the sleeves, get people around the table and talk through the issues and find a way forward. So I'll always talk to anyone about this. The only rule, I suppose, I'd set is we've got to treat each other with respect. And J.K. Rowling, I respect her, and I don't suggest for a minute that she doesn't, you know, she's made some really important points. I'd welcome that discussion, because I do think that we made huge progress on women's rights under Labour governments and equality, massive progress. There's more work to be done if we are privileged to come in to serve this country. And I want to make sure that we can bring people together and take our
comments like that get to you? You're really ready. You're about to, if the polls are to be believed, walk down Downing Street in 10 days' time with a super majority. But are you ready for it? Is it sunk in yet?
We are not. I mean, I respect voters too much to presume anything. We have to earn every vote.
But, I mean, if the polls are to be believed, it's going to be a supermajority.
Polls don't predict the future.
Do you know what you'd do with a majority of that?
What I would say for this is this. This is a change election. We've had 14 years of this now. We know things aren't working. I think everybody knows it in their bones. They tell me this across the country. Things are really broken. People are really frustrated, quite worried about the future. We can't go on like this. Have you seen any evidence in this election that the Tory party has changed, is going to be different if it comes into power? They're busy. The first instinct about the date of the election is not go out.
We've done the
and
betting.
Talk about
We've done the betting.
But they're not changed. So we have the chance now for change, to turn the page, rebuild with Labour. But change is only going to happen if people go out and vote for it. So I'm taking nothing for granted, and we will fight for every vote until the close of the day on election day, a week on Thursday.
Entourage is waiting. You've got to go. We've had a lot of time. I was going to ask you one more question, if you don't mind. Last time you came on Never Mind the Ballots, I said that I would read the book about you, because you'd read the book I wrote
read your book.
Exactly. Well, I did read your book. And I found a really interesting line in it. One of your former advisors said that you're not the sort of person that would set out a radical vision and then have to row back. You're the sort of person that would exhaust conventional options and then eventually become more radical. Is that what Britain's about to get as Keir Starmer Prime Minister?
I think...
You're saying not all everything now, but actually, secretly, you're plotting something quite big.
Oh, no, we are. I mean, for the NHS, for example, I think job number one is to put it back on its feet, get it working again, get those waiting lists down. But we are ambitious about actually changing the NHS so that it's fit for the next 75, 76 years, for example. That's a big job. The Labour Party, Labour government set up the NHS. That's one of the proudest things we've ever done. I don't want forever to be looking back. I want to make sure that for future generations, they can say that the 2024 government got to grips for making sure the NHS was fit for the future.
And you're confident you don't have to raise any further taxes than you set out in your manifesto to pay for it?
No, we've set out... Our manifesto's got a schedule at the back of it, costing everything we've said we're going to do, and saying where the money is coming from, because we know from Liz Truss, if you don't do that, then you damage the economy and working people are paying the price. And I think there was a question earlier from somebody about mortgages, and I've met so many people who have come off their fixed-rate mortgage in the last couple of years and now having to pay hundreds of pounds more because of what the Tories did to the economy. I'm never going to let a Labour government do that, which is why everything is fully costed and fully funded.
Sir Keir Starmer, I think we've heard lots, you've heard lots. Thank you for coming to Never Mind the Ballots. Just before you go, and I'm sorry, it's by dint of going last, you have to see this bit, but hands up who thought Sir Keir Starmer performed better than Rishi Sunak. Oh, it's quite split. Who thought Rishi Sunak was the winner? Oh. Who thinks we've learnt more about what Sir Keir Starmer might do in 10 days? Oh, not as many hands. And who trusts him? There we go, not bad.
Not bad. Thank
Sir Keir Starmer, thank you very much. Right, let's cross back to Kate. She has the post-match analysis and the very, very sophisticated polling numbers of putting up hands. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Harry. And still joining me in the studio is, of course, Gillian Keegan, Tory Education Secretary, and Jonathan Ashworth, the Shadow Paymaster General. Well, plenty to get stuck into there. Jonathan, I'll come to you first. Keir looked awkward when he was asked about Jeremy Corbyn, his previous support for Jeremy Corbyn. Do you agree with Keir that Corbyn would have made a better PM than Boris Johnson?
Well, I mean, if you recall the last election, I was... it was what my views were as... I think you wrote about what my views were at the time. Look...
You're talking about a leaked conversation you had when you criticised Corbyn.
No, I didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn to be leader of the Labour Party, and neither did Keir Starmer. He voted against Jeremy Corbyn twice. He actually wrote to Jeremy Corbyn making it clear what he thought of his leadership. But of course, we knew we were heading for the almighty hammering in those elections, and we had to do all we could to get as many good Labour colleagues elected, because we would have to rebuild this party from the ashes. And what Keir has done since has completely transformed this party. Jeremy Corbyn isn't a Labour candidate. Liz Truss is still a Tory candidate.
It's just a
and that's the
complete
difference.
rewriting of history. And actually, David Lammy, the guy who wants to be Foreign Secretary, nominated Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, who literally, if we'd have looked at, Keir praised Boris about Ukraine. If they'd have got their way and Jeremy Corbyn was there, what would he have done when Ukraine was invaded? We don't even know he'd be on the side of the Ukrainians. It is such a serious thing.
Jonathan, I wondered...
And also, second referendum, you can't just constantly change. These are positions like 4 or 5 years ago. Constantly changing your positions. Wait until everything else has been sorted out and then saying, actually, that's what
I want to ask Jonathan something. Jonathan, do you regret serving on Jeremy's front bench now?
No, I was doing all I could to get as many good Labour colleagues re-elected, because I knew we were going to get absolutely hammered in general elections. And look, I've been a member of this Labour Party since I was 15, right? The Labour Party, I believe, has been one of the greatest forces for social justice our country has seen. We created the National Health Service. We introduced the minimum... Let me finish. We introduced the national minimum wage. We introduced things like Sure Start centres and tax credits. In the 1960s, we introduced a whole load of reforms around gay rights and race discrimination. Right? I was always going to fight for the Labour Party because I knew that a group of us would have to rebuild the Labour Party. And we've changed the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn is not a candidate. Liz Truss is a Tory candidate. And if you want change in this country, you've got to vote Labour.
So one thing that came up in that interview, Gillian, was borders.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer was heavily challenged there over his plans. He wants to junk the Rwanda policy.
Well, he hasn't got a plan on immigration. His command is no different to the small boat command that's in place today, that is working today. And how insulting to our intelligence agencies and our national crime agencies and all those people to say, I'm going to get them to share information, as if all this is not going on already. The only thing that the National Crime Agency said is to really strengthen this, we need a deterrent. Rwanda is that deterrent. Now, I was listening to a speech from somebody recently who was on the Rwanda Monitoring Control, who said it's all there, it's all ready to go, and if this guy gets elected, he's going to rip it up. And as was questioned there, what do you do with these people who come without passports? You can't just send them back to anywhere. You need to send them to somewhere that's a safe country, which is why Rwanda.
Let's ask Jonathan that.
Jonathan,
what happens
send them back.
To these people?
To where? Where? You don't know where they came from.
Send them back from where they come from. Send them back from where they come from.
Gillian, wait. So
what
happens if they come from, say, Afghanistan, countries where you cannot send them back to, Jonathan?
Well, we can't just throw our hands in the air and say, well, we can't be done. This is their approach. We've got to send
No,
these...
it's not. This is the
Yes,
guy.
it is.
The guy asked him.
Literally is your approach.
In the question, he
literally
said,
is your approach.
What happens if you put the papers in the sea, which we know is happening, right?
Yeah.
We know that's happening.
Gillian,
That's why Rwanda is the plan that is recommended.
OK, fine. We're going to continue this discussion, I'm sure, after the show. Thank you both very much for joining me today. Now, I hear Harry Cole is upstairs with two other big-hitting politicians. You've got Chris Heaton-Harris there with you, Harry, I think, and Labour's Shadow Cabinet Minister, Bridget Phillipson, to get more reaction to those interviews.
That is right, Kate. It sounds like you two, well, you three have just been going at it all the way through there. I'm not sure you heard you getting a word in Edgware. Chris Heaton-Harris, you've worked for Rishi Sunak up close, you've worked for Boris Johnson up close, you've been part of this administration for a long time. Do you really think that was a man that looked like he was on the cusp of pulling back the greatest comeback since... I don't know who.
That's the Rishi Sunak I want on every doorstep in the country. I want people to see what that Rishi Sunak, where he's absolutely clear on what he's going to do with the economy and what Labour isn't. He's absolutely clear what he wants to do on immigration. Actually, a man with a plan instead of a man who wants change and change for the worse for this country.
Bridget, there was clear tension in the room at times between our readers and Sir Keir Starmer on that issue of trust, on that issue of borders. Do you think he did enough tonight to convince people? The show of hands wasn't... It was pretty split.
Look, we know that lots of people have still to make their minds up about how they're going to vote in the election. We're fighting hard every single day. And my message is that if people want change, if they want to turn our country around, then the way to do that is to vote Labour. And I think what we heard from Keir was a clear plan for how we'll make sure we get our NHS back on its feet, how we stop the boats and make sure we see action on the boats.
Some of the people in the room thought the Stop the Boats plan was a bit woolly.
Well, I think getting Border Security Command, making sure we're working at source to crack down on those gangs. Keir did that when he was Chief Prosecutor. We need to treat this as a national security issue. We take it seriously. We've got to protect our borders. I completely get behind that. But we haven't seen that, and that was what came out loud and clear in the discussion you had with Rishi Sunak.
Chris, it doesn't seem to me the Prime Minister can cut a break. He launched his campaign to be re-elected as Prime Minister basically from the shower, and it's been going sort of downhill since then. You've got D-Day scandals, betting scandals, wheels coming off the Tory bus, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you're turning into the James Corden of this political world, Harry.
James Corden, that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
No, obviously. A slimmer and slightly more sexy version then, OK. No, I mean, it's been a tough campaign. It's been a tough election so far. But actually, we've been going out on doorsteps. I've been on hundreds, thousands of doorsteps, trying to get the message across that we actually do have a plan. And when you listen to the Prime Minister this evening, I'd like to think that came across in the areas that we talked about: the economy, immigration model. Keir was talking about not having returns agreement to Rwanda, but he's going to send people back to Afghanistan and Syria now.
Look,
I mean, that's not true. It's simply not going to happen, is it?
If you were confident the flights were going to get off, I don't understand why you would have called an election before it actually happened. I don't think you have confidence that your plan works. And it's costing a fortune.
No, we are very,
millions
very
of pounds
confident in
on
our plan.
hotels. Totally inappropriate when we should focus on cracking down on the gangs.
Bridget, you're currently the Shadow Education Secretary. You could be the Education Secretary in 10 days' time if the polls have been believed. You measuring the curtains? What's the first thing you're going to do in the job?
No, I'm out fighting hard
I knew you wouldn't fall for that, yeah.
every single vote. But we do have a plan for how we will make sure...
It does look like it's game over, though, isn't it?
No, I think a lot of people, like, you know, Chris, I've been out on the doors. I think a lot of people still want to be persuaded by Labour. That's what we'll be fighting hard to do every day up until the 4th of July. And where it comes to education, for example, we know that our schools are under big pressure at the moment.
Yep.
And that's why we want to get more teachers into our classrooms in areas like maths and science, where we've got big gaps at the moment.
I'm going to leave you two to carry on this argument. I think lots of other journalists... Lots of other journalists will have questions for you shortly, but we're going to talk to Sun readers now. We're going to talk to our Sun cabinet. Hundreds of people applied to come to this great event. I think it's been a pretty punchy afternoon of back and forth between Keir Starmer. My first person is right here, the Sun's very own Education Secretary. Carrie Ann, what did you think?
Well, it was really interesting. I think Rishi is very polished and talks a good talk. Yeah. And as a former teacher myself, it was interesting to hear him say we've got the best readers in the Western world, but I'd love to invite him to our schools to see our overcrowded classrooms, teachers that are leaving, hundreds of teachers leaving, unqualified teachers teaching our children, and SEN children who can't cope in our overcrowded schools and
we would have asked
dangerous corridors.
Yeah, there were hundreds of questions we could have asked both of those leads. On Keir Starmer, do you think he's ready? Did you get that feeling? You've spoken to him before when he came into the Sun about 6 months ago. Do you see an improvement there? Do you trust him?
Yeah, well, I wasn't a big fan of Keir Starmer. I said that when I first met him, and the more I see of him, the more I like him. But what I really get from Keir Starmer is that he has a better understanding of people like me, working class people, and he wants to fix our public services.
Do you believe he'll be able to do it without putting up taxes there?
If taxes have to go up a little bit, then, you know, I'd rather my little girl go to a safe school. I'd rather get a hospital appointment. I'd rather be able to go and see a dentist. You know, we're not going to get all these things for free. But I think, like he said, we need to look after everybody. Everybody should have a fair chance. There should be an even playing field. And I think, you know, that's what's going to have to happen.
Karen, thank you. I think there was someone who was trying to get a question in. I couldn't hear you, so I'm very sorry because you didn't have a microphone, but you do now. And is it Boris? Hello, Boris. Good to see you. Welcome back. What you having to go at Sir Keir Starmer on the small boats issue? What was your concern?
Well, he keeps saying about his defence force. He keeps saying about his defence force.
Yeah.
He's going to build a command centre. How can he do it when the gangs are in front?
Well, I mean, that's a fair point. Do you think he answered enough questions there on migration on boats? Who thought I thought it was a bit of a lively topic of discussion there. What did you all think? Anyone have any particular views? Doctor, what do you think, madam? Sorry, can I borrow this microphone here? Sorry. There we go. What was your concerns?
He didn't answer the question at all.
Which one? Any of them?
On what he was going to do with the boats.
Yeah. And what about Rishi? How did you feel he did?
He sort of... There was a maybe. I'm not keen on Rishi Sunak's ideas either. He should be... The boats should be towed back to France. They should not be brought into our waters and handed over by the French Navy to our RNLI.
To hazard a guess, do you think Nigel Farage might do a better job than these two at that?
I'm not sure, but it just worries me that what if he's our best bet with the way things are going?
Fascinating. Who else has got a microphone down here? Anyone? Who? Oh, I've lost them. No? Thank you. I'll take it with you. Who wants... Dr Pasha, how are you? Lovely to see you again. Sun's Health Secretary. You've got a microphone. Yeah. Take that one.
I think Rishi was actually phenomenal today.
Phenomenal?
He really was.
You've changed your tune because you were a bit sceptical of him before.
I was Team Keir all this time, and Rishi...
So you literally swung your vote tonight?
Yeah, and I genuinely think that... I really like the way that he mentioned his grandparents, because I think he gets a lot of slack for who he's married to and how well he's done. And actually, we should look at people like him as... and aspire to be like him and aspire to do better. So I actually trusted him. He was speaking in specifics rather than all fluff like here. So I was backing him today.
Did anyone else change their mind based on what they've seen today? Jonathan, what did you think? Our Sun's Home Secretary.
I didn't change my mind.
Will you be... I'm not going to ask you to vote, but you're going to vote for one of these two?
Yes.
Intriguing.
The thing about just what the gentleman, Boris, and the lady was saying there, and obviously Sir Keir doesn't know my background and having worked with the National Crime Agency.
Yes. Well, I was trying to make your point about deterrence there.
And I've worked with immigration, I've worked with border control. These individuals, these hard-working officers are in place. They've been doing this for very many, many years. And I also know the deportation squad that works, and I know what they go through. Whoever's advising him is wrong. The fact is, they are being processed.
Yeah.
Deportation does still occur, but it can't because of the amount of people that are now coming in illegally. And of course, yes, processing must occur, but it can't occur if you haven't got documents. And they really must understand that a bit better.
I'm going to go back. I'm going to take that microphone off his head, but I'm going to go to the lady at the back there in the black t-shirt. I'm coming over to you. Hold on. What did you reckon? I'm trying not to fall over, basically.
What I wanted to say that I actually thought Rishi looked like a man on the ropes.
Yeah.
I don't think he was. I think his responses could have been written by ChatGPT. Or like,
he does like AI.
It's very AI. Whereas I thought that Keir actually was more of a. You were getting more of a human response. Like I think Rishi was. It was too robotic. It was too you could have just churned it out.
How did you think?
The same thing and over again. Whereas I think you actually got a sense of of Keir Starmer being more of a human being rather than this robotic response that you're getting.
How do you think he dealt with the sort of audience interaction and the sort of interruptions?
I don't think he dealt with it very, very well. I think Keir Starmer dealt with it a lot better because he actually addressed people's concerns and he actually addressed them and he actually talked to them. Whereas I just felt it was just being spewed out by it's just a general rhetoric that you just hear in and out, taxes, NHS. So I felt like Keir Starmer did a far better job.
Thank you, madam. Well, look, that is a very split audience. Some Rishi fans, some Keir fans, some people that changed their mind tonight. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you've been more informed by the Sun's election showdown. We'll be back tomorrow morning with a massive, another dust-up with all the spinners, all the post-match analysis. We'll have polls, we'll have graphs, we'll have everything. You can sign up at sun.co.uk/sun, youtube.com/Sun election. You won't miss a thing. Thank you for viewing tonight. Thanks everyone here for coming. Thank you for your brilliant questions. Good night.